welcome to Daily Debrief brought to you by People's Dispatch. I'm Pragya. Afghan women protested in defense of the historically oppressed Hazara minority as the death toll from Friday's suicide attack in a Kabul study hall crossed 50. Swedish scientist Svante Pääbo wins Nobel for medicine. He found a genetic connection between Neanderthals and the ancestors of today's humans. And in the United States, the trial of Stuart Rhodes and 4 extreme right-wing Oathkeepers commences in the Jan 6 Capitol Hill attack case. We begin with Hazaras, an oppressed minority in Southwest Asia who have often been targets of violent attacks. The latest was among the most brutal in recent history, a suicide attack on an education center in western Kabul. No group has taken responsibility for the killing, which took over 50 lives, mostly of women. The Hazaras are a Shia minority in Afghanistan, excluded and targeted often. Abdul is with us to discuss the incident and its fallout. Abdul, let's begin with this Dasht-e-Barchi incident. It has really shocked the world. What happened there? What do we know so far?
As per the reports, on Friday, I think September 30th, the suicide bomber was inside, which basically blew himself near the... It is an educational institution where women in particular were practicing for university exams, which is upcoming. Mostly women from the Hazara community, and he entered. First they entered, killed the guards, entered the premises and blew himself, leading to around, as there are different numbers quoted in different reports, but more than 50 people, women primarily, were killed in that incident. Since that incident, there has been a lot of protests all across Afghanistan, primarily led by women, who basically are trying to assert their right to education and also raising the issues related to the persecution of, which is a very grave issue, persecution of Hazara minorities, primarily because most of the victims in that in this attack are Hazara women.
Okay, Abdul, can you also put this particular attack and other attacks like it in the context of Afghanistan and what's happening there?
Well, we all know that since the Taliban has taken power since last year, there has been several incidents like this. There are, of course, allegations. Some of them are claimed, some of them are not claimed. But primarily, the allegation is on the fundamentalist group, a radical fundamentalist group called ISIS, Khorasan, which is basically Afghanistan. So its branch in Afghanistan is responsible mostly for these attacks. That's what the claims are. It also reflects, most of these attacks are on the minorities, primarily on Hazaras. So of course, it basically shows that there is a ongoing hatred against the minorities, and particularly because it is considered that Afghanistan's Taliban government is not able to maintain the law and order as it was expected. So to expose that, basically the minorities are being targeted, because unlike Taliban at this moment, the earlier versions of Taliban had openly announced Hazaras as non-Muslims, and therefore the shift in Taliban's narrative is basically there is an attempt to delegitimize it.
Okay.
So we should understand that aspect as well. There is another point which basically related to the attempt of Afghan women to get education. And if you see, most of the attacks which has happened during Taliban's regime so far are mostly on educational institution and primarily targeting the women in particular. So we know that since Taliban has come to power, despite the fact that they announced that the women education will be allowed, schools will reopen, apart from the universities in some places and primary schools, most of the other schools in most of the most parts of Afghanistan have been shut. They have not been allowed to function freely. And therefore, this attack should also be, is basically, not should, it basically adds to this whole atmosphere of discrimination, isolation, and pushing women away to a corner. Because if there are attacks, repeated attacks on educational institutions, of course it discourages women and discourages their parents to send them to educational institution. So the attacks, apart from causing human suffering, killing, and so on and so forth, it also creates a kind of a blockade on the possibility of free and right to education of women in Afghanistan.
Right, Abdul. Thanks a lot for that update. The coveted Nobel Prize for Medicine in 2022 has gone to Svante Pääbo, a molecular biologist. His experiments launched the new scientific discipline called Paleo-genomics. That is when scientists study the extinct ancestors of Homo sapiens, today's humans. Put simply, Pääbo discovered Neanderthals once had children with Homo sapiens. That's also why paleogenomics sparks popular interest as well as heated political debates. Let's ask Prabir Purkayastha why his work matters. Prabir, thanks for joining us. Prabir, what's the scientific relevance of Pääbo's work? Why is paleogenomics getting the award this year?
Well, Svante Pääbo getting the award for work in paleogenomics this year in medicine, of course, is supposed to be linked to the fact that some of the information we get from genomics also relates to what could be possible effects in medical terms. Like, for instance, when COVID-19 happened, it was argued that some of the Neanderthal genes that we carry, all of us carry some bits of it, could be more prone to certain kinds of problems than others. Now, how true that is, how much we should rely on that is open to question. But it is definitely a fact that there are genetic propensities, shall we say, to our diseases as well. And maybe that if we can, the fact we carry different kind of genomic components could have also an effect that each group that carries a certain amount of genomic heritage could react differently to other groups. Now, all of this are open to question at the moment. That how much it is it really some significant amount, or is it really we are looking at correlations which are really not causations? So they could be causes, could be something else. We are looking at correlations. So this debate will still go on. So giving him the award for medicine is of course, one can question that. But the point is, where do you give awards for in studies on genetics? You can give them in chemistry, you can give them in biological sciences, which is what medicine partly is. So this is really why we are giving him what is called the award in medicine, what is commonly called as award in medicine. But if you look at what the award is, it's Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. Okay. Right. So we can argue that though it is called award for medicine, it's for physiology. So we leave it at that. The question that arises is, what is his contribution? I think there is a very, very significant contribution that he seems to have made according to the peer group who look at this kind of work, is that, refining ancient DNA, what is really DNA which has been lying there for 30, 40, 100,000 years, was initially thought to be almost impossible, partly because the DNA degenerates with time, disintegrates, is also contaminated by other DNA that is there, for instance, bacterial DNA. So as the ancient human DNA decomposes, it can get contaminated by other DNA from even human beings in the laboratories, for example, because you're really looking at small amounts of DNA that you are trying to amplify, create from that many number of copies that you need in order to be able to study it, which is what all of this paleogenetics work is. So if the DNA is old, it is contaminated, it has disintegrated over time, then building that original information of what it was seems to be a very daunting exercise. And initially, it was thought that it will not be possible to do it. But over the last 20, 30 years, two things have happened. One is the technology of being able to amplify this information has increased. And that's really the credit to people like Svante Pääbo and various others. He's, of course, one of them, but various others as well, who has been able to show that it is possible to amplify this trace DNA and also separate it from the contamination with other DNA that is there. So Pääbo's, of course, central work in this was the fact that he traced out ancient Neanderthal DNA and what is called in the Siberian cave Denisovans. This is the other DNA that he was able to amplify and show their relationship to what would be called anatomically modern humans.
Homo sapiens, yes, and this is also why, Prabir, this field of scientific work attracts a lot of attention, not just from the scientists, but politicians, ordinary people are very curious about ancestry. Does that have some kind of a fallout here?
It has a fallout not only here, in other places as well, because a lot of the underpinnings to what would be called race theories, or even racist theories, if you will, it hinges upon the fact that we are not similar, but we are different. And we are different because A, we have more this kind of genetic composition than other kind of genetic compositions which others have. So underpinning at the end of it, any supremacy theory, whether it is Aryan supremacy, whether it is white supremacy, all of it hinges upon the fact that you think there is a genetic component to humans which make a certain group of humans superior to others. Now, if you go into white supremacy theory, and this is not of today, we are really talking of the misuse of Mendelian genetics. And this is really what race theories were built on. It was very popular and it manifested itself in eugenic theories of different kinds. And as you know, one of the consequences is the Holocaust in Germany. So this is not something which is to be taken lightly, because this does have effect in contemporary terms, though it, after Nazi Germany's use of these kind of theories, it became unpopular in public domain, at least to refer to this kind of eugenic theories. But let's put it, the father of these theories really came, of eugenic theories came from essentially London and in United States. It's really Great Britain and the United States which popularized this first. In India, as you have talked about, it's also it's what the Aryan issue is about in India. And the argument that Aryans did not come from outside, but were always here. Who are the Aryans? And therefore, how do you analyze the Rakhigarhi, for instance, skeletons from which some DNA has been recovered? All of this feed into this. And it's really, all of this bear out, the science of it bears out that these have no relationship to any of the debates that we are undergoing, either of Aryans coming, are being indigenous to India, not coming from outside, or the superiority of any race over others, because our component of these are so minor that they have really no relevance to the larger makeup of human beings. And as somebody has pointed out, the orangutans, gorillas, chimpanzees have much more variety, that though they are much smaller in size in terms of numbers, but they are much more variety than what the human population has. So I think those are really racist theories which are more located not in science, but in essentially in politics of the current era.
Right, Prabir. Thanks very much for joining us. Trial of the Oathkeepers, 5 members of an extreme right-wing group, has begun in the United States. Its members include Stuart Rhodes, whose trial began with the prosecution playing videos of their alleged planning, training for and coordination of the attack on Capitol Hill well before it occurred. They're also seen as Trump supporters who wanted to halt the congressional certification of votes in the 2020 US presidential election. We'll go over to Anish from People's Dispatch for more on this. Anish, what is this organization and its alleged role in the 6th January incident last year?
So the Oathkeepers are just one of the many right-wing organizations that popped up around the time of Trump's campaign and after that. It pretty much is one of those organizations that want to, inspire a sort of armed insurrection against the establishment. Now, in the January 6th trial that we are looking at, prosecutors have claimed that the organization was calling for a sort of civil war, or talking about at least a civil war of sorts, to prevent the transition of power from Trump to Biden, and to prevent the Congress from certifying the results of the presidential election in 2020. Now, this whole thing is very serious enough, but there is also this fact that the prosecutors are trying to downplay Trump's role in actually orchestrating this entire thing, in the sense that they are stating that Trump was not directly involved in actually organizing the entire process. But we know statements made by him. Of course, he is going through a trial of that separately. But the prosecutors are claiming that in this case, the Oathkeepers and other right-wing groups acted pretty much on their own, because Trump and Pence refused to take some extreme steps to prevent the transition from happening. Now, the whole point is here to look at the kind of right-wing upsurge that the United States has gone through in the past few years. Obviously, right before the elections, the US was looking at an uptick of hate crimes, not only against the African American and American Indian population, but also a whole host of Asian American, Indian American, and so on. Any sort of minority groups that did not fit within the white supremacist spectrum were under attack of some sort or the other. Now, it could range from desecration to outright shooting, as we have seen, mass shootings, and that has been a problem that still continues to persist. And the Oathkeepers and their continued existence is pretty much part of that. Although they do not have an explicitly white supremacist agenda, they do align with the extreme right-wing groups in the United States for now.
Okay, Anish, how is the trial as a whole progressing, and how is it feeding into the politics of the moment in the United States?
Well, we have to first begin with the fact that the trial this trial against Oathkeepers, the prosecution against the Oathkeepers is significant, because this is pretty much the first time that an organization is being pulled up to be responsible for the attack on Capitol that happened in 2021, January 2021. And it is significant primarily because an organization of this, these are people with thousands of armed members who were mobilized on a very short notice to the national capital and asked to stand to prevent a very constitutional process from happening. So this shows that there is a sort of dangerous momentum of right-wing forces happening already. Obviously, it was pretty much out in the open during the Trump administration. We do not see as much open propaganda at the Biden administration, but that does not mean that on the ground they are not existent or their forces have come down. There is definitely a significant level of support for the Trump brand of politics, but also this brand of sort of armed insurrectionary politics, which is who call themselves and brand themselves as revolutionaries of sorts. primarily because they, have a whole host of very misguided theories about how they view history, obviously. But this shows that the larger politics or the larger scheme of things, this group definitely is a dangerous problem that the United States really need to deal with, actually. And it's not just Oathkeepers, but it's also groups like Proud Boys that other countries are banning, but the United States is still refusing to actually take measures that could prevent them from expanding, or any kind of prescription. That is not happening either. So these are facts, but this trial shows that there is some level of attempt at the highest level of the US government to bring people who are actually responsible for organizing this violent event to hold them responsible and bring them to court.
Right, Anish. Thanks a lot for joining us with that update. And that's all we have for you today. Thank you for watching Daily Debrief. Do come back to us on Thursday. You can find more such stories on our website, peoplesdispatch.org, and our regular updates on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.